Hey guys, it's Geoff and Lauren here. We run a website called Discover Double Bass where we teach you all about the instrument. So if you want to learn more about the double bass, that's the place to go after this video. Today we're answering a question from Alexander. So Lauren, let's get straight into it. Alexander saying, hey guys, great video as always. I was just interested if you've tried the Kaplan strings by Diodario and what your opinion was. Also, I'm curious if you could recommend any of the good hybrid sets. I play classical, jazz, blues, and bluegrass. So, Alexander, you've got a lot of stuff going on here. This is a great topic, hybrid strings. I'll start out, Lauren, and share what my experiences are. I use for hybrid stuff, and the string that I use all the time is Pirastro, Evah, Pirazzi, Weich. The light gauge set, and I don't just use them because they're light gauge. I actually think they've got a little bit more brightness than the orchestral set that they do, which is the medium gauge. I wish string companies would start naming strings in a normal way. Why do we have to have all these different terms?
What is, why do I have to learn a language?
Exactly.
Understand?
So, just on a side note, by the way, guys, can you Pirastro as well, I love their strings. I really do, but man, they make it
they're
hard.
the best.
There's all the Flatchrome, original Flatchrome, Flatchrome Flexis. What on earth is going on, guys? Can we just get this sorted out? But I love that string. It's I think it's the best hybrid set that I found because I really like the amplified jazz sound, the pitch sound that I get from it. I think sometimes I wonder they're a bit darker, than I'd like. Spirocore are great. Sometimes I think they're a bit bright. And I like the way that Spirocore bow, but they are very harsh under the bow, Sometimes I like that directness, actually. But playing quickly and playing off the string and... then you move on to an orchestral set like Belcanto, and you're like, oh wow, this is why we should be using an orchestral string because they're just a joy to play, or original Flatchrome or whatever. But one... you can't really mix and match them very well. It doesn't. I've just found that like Belcanto, they even sound pretty good acoustically for jazz, but it's when you start amplifying stuff that it's just a big boo, kind of sound. And the Evah Pirazzi are the only ones that I've got that I'm comfortable enough to really have as a recommend as a decent hybrid set. And I just think that, like the Kaplan strings, to answer your question, I've tried them and they're absolutely wonderful. I had a friend of mine, Chris, he was playing a heavy gauge set and it just sounded absolutely great. But he was playing in a show which was largely, it was a classical kind of, it was a string, he was playing in a string section in a show, and, it wasn't an amplified kind of jazz gig, and I know that they wouldn't work for that. If you're playing the only thing is if you're playing just acoustically, you might be able to get away with it. But in my experience, I just can't get them to cut through in the Belcantos, particularly when amplified. So I recommend the Evah Pirazzi Weich, but they don't bow as well as an arco string. So it's always a compromise. And in an ideal world, we'd all have a couple of basses and a third one with cut strings for those bluegrass gigs.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I don't know, Lauren. How have you found it?
I feel exactly the same way. To be completely honest with you, I really just don't like hybrid strings. I think if you try to make one string do everything, then you're going to suffer somewhere, And if you think about it, the strings that you buy for, say, solo playing, or you buy specifically for jazz or specifically for orchestral playing, they're marketed that way because that's what they're best at. That's what they were created for. That's what they were manufactured for. And so as soon as you start taking strings and kind of trying to get the best of both worlds, I just think that you're going to suffer a little bit, and it's really frustrating, and I get really frustrated when I'm going between solo playing and when I have an orchestral gig, because the lazy person in me would like to just tune the strings down a step, because with solo strings, I should mention, solo strings are tuned up a whole step. So instead of G, D, A, E, you're tuned A, E, B, F sharp. So I'd really love to just be able to tune the strings down and have that be fine. But if I do that, then no one will hear me and it'll sound horrible.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating because I have to change strings. But, if you want to be comfortable and really get the best sound out of, what you're doing, then I don't know. I kind of feel like you really just need to go for the strings that are sort of marketed for what you're doing. But that being said, I do remember playing the Kaplans when they first came out. I can't remember. It was several years ago, and I remember liking them, but I didn't play for them for very long. I just remember liking the sound of them bowed, but I don't know what they sound like when they're plucked. So.
Yeah, they like most orchestral strings. I guess the other string that there'll be some people like shouting at the screen is people have got a real thing about Spirocore. There's a lot of real diehard, Spirocore for everything kind of thing. And I think
I love Spirocores, honestly. I think I don't think you could really market it as a hybrid string, but I mean, maybe you could. I mean, honestly, if you're playing a whole lot of jazz and you're also using the bow, really like Spirocores are the best. I mean, I know that they're a little bit tricky under the bow, but they're so good. I mean, it's really it comes down to, if you can gain that control in the bow where you can just understand how those strings work, they're not like, say, my Flatchromes where just the second that the bow hits the string, they've got that front to the note. When you're playing them, it's like when you pluck them, they've got that wah wah kind of sound. So you have to figure out how to counter it. But that being said, I think that if you want to have some kind of hybrid between jazz and some kind of arco, whatever that is, I think Spirocores are absolutely the way to go.
Yeah, they're definitely one of my favourites. I've done a review video on Spirocore Weich, and I've done a review video of the Evah Weichs as well. And in the end, for me, I've ended up on the Evas. But the biggest factor is actually not the arco response. It's actually the fact that the pit sound. I think I just enjoy the sound of the Evas. They've got a different tone. But at the same time, honestly, I kind of think my life would be easier if somehow there was some kind of law that made only Spirocores and Belcantos the only available strings, or original Flatchromes, and that was the only ones we were allowed to use.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I agree with you. It's almost like we have so many choices now that it's like we don't really even know what to do
and
with
especially
ourselves.
When you get people like Edgar Meyer, mixing sets, and the Spirocores in the low end can work quite well in terms of adding.
The Spirocores on the low end are excellent, and that's the thing. When I'm really preparing for like a solo recital, then I'll just keep my Flatchromes on at all times. And if I get an orchestral gig or a gig where I need to be out of solo tuning, then I'll just change them really quick. It takes 30 minutes. It sucks, but you do it. And then, if I'm, gigging with an orchestra that rehearses all week, then I just put my Belcantos on, and it makes a world of difference. You don't want to just have to worry about suffering in one area,
Absolutely. Ease. Well, listen, Alexander, I hope that's helped you with your string quest. If you're like me and Lauren, you'll probably end up with like a drawer full of strings and, a repetitive strain injury from changing them all the time.
Yeah.
So good luck with that. Keep practicing hard. And if you want to let us know what strings you're using, especially in, terms of a really good hybrid set, we'd love to hear your experiences. Come and join us in the conversation in the comment section below this video. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.